Hello everyone and welcome to Hidden Existence. I've got a great show tonight and a great guest, and my guest is Jackie Tonks. Welcome, Jackie.
Thank you.
You're welcome to Hidden Existence. Oh, I can't believe I've done that. Got a great show tonight and a great... I've done that every time I've had my volume on. Sorry about that. Jackie, you're into cryptozoology, paranormal. You've been out doing investigations. You've also been over to America and got involved with some Bigfoot investigations there and had encounters. And so I think we've got a lot we can talk about tonight. But where did it all start definitely. For you?
About me? Probably best to start how I actually got into all this. As a child, I used to watch Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World that was on in the 70s, early 80s. And I remember sort of with the Bigfoot stuff, watching the iconic sort of image of Patty walking across the creek bed, as we know, the Patterson-Gimlin film. And I sort of, thought, oh, I'd love to go and look for Bigfoot, but I didn't think I'd ever do it. And then, be about 14, 15 years ago now, I was I used to read the 14 Times magazine quite a lot, so I still maintain the interest from a child. And I was living in Exeter at the time, near St David's Station, train station, and I finished reading an article on the Mongolian death worm. And I looked at the end and there was a picture of the guy who'd written the article, and I thought, oh, he looks a bit scary, gothic guy. Anyway, it was about 10 at night and I had a dog at the time. I thought, well, I better walk the dog. So I walked to the end of my street, which is probably about 20 houses long, and then crossed to just turned left and went towards a pub called the Mill on the X, which is where I used to walk my dog towards. And I crossed the road. And suddenly the guy whose photo I just looked at walked past me, which completely freaked me out, because this is an international magazine, it's not just a small local magazine. So that was the weird thing. So I just sort of swung round and it was quite dark, and I said, are you Richard? And he went, yeah. And he looked at me strangely, and my dog was a bit scary looking. It was like a border collie, but it looks a bit like a wolf. So my dog I had then, so that was freaked him out a bit, I think. And then I said, oh, do you write for the 14 Times? And he said, oh, yeah, I do. And I goes, you Richard Freeman? He goes, yeah. And I went, oh, my God, I've just read your article in the house. So we got chatting. And then about 6 months later, I saw him in the W8 Smith buying 14 Times at St David's Station. They've got a W8 Smith there. And then he said, oh, we've got a conference coming up, the Weird Weekend, which then we held one in Devon. They've now only got one up in Manchester now, Weird Weekend North. At the time there was one in Devon. So I sort of invited me along. So I sort of saw him again and met loads of the others. And that's what got me into it. And
that's
and Richard's one of my best friends now, and we've done quite some expeditions together. And I also met Adam Davies on one of those, who's, that sort of got his own production company at the time with Andrew Sanderson. And they invited me over Bigfooting, and I didn't expect this thing to exist at all. I just thought, it's not very small percentage chance it can actually exist at that point. But I thought, I really, really want to see a bear. I want to go into the American wilderness, loads of wildlife. So I said I'd go, but within about 2 days of being there, I was about 90% convinced this thing existed. And then we got footprints about 3-4 days in, I think it was. We got a camera trap photo that looks like the back of something rather large and man-like, but definitely wasn't one of us. We sort of checked out the position, and we got one of our bigger chaps to go crouch in the position it was in, and we were a lot smaller. This thing, somebody said, did a sort of analysis of it. You can see this on YouTube, Extreme Expeditions Bigfoot, and they reckon it was about 8 foot tall. This thing. Oh, wow. And it looks like from the back a domed head and everything. So that scared us all. A bit freaked, because it was literally couple of foot away from the tents. Suddenly no footprints because it was too dusty. And then on the last day I was there, and this would have been 2012 I went at. On the last day, just as I'm clearing the tent away, I heard a howl going down the valley, and I grabbed Dave Archer and he heard the end of it, because I was actually sort of just standing in the leat of the river right in the middle just to have a wash. And I heard this howl and I thought, "Ooh, that sounds exactly like what I heard off YouTube." So I thought, "Ooh, this, you know." And we spoke to loads of people who'd, you know, relatives had seen one, occasional people had, you know, person had actually seen one directly themselves. So I was starting to think, "Oh, there's something in this." And then I got invited out the next year with Tom Cantrell and his team, International Society of Primal People, which is an organisation that's very much into the sort of, you know, treats Bigfoot in a very humane way, you know, a very respectful way. And then that was when I had my Bigfoot sighting. So I'm 100% believer now, not just 90-odd%. So,
what did you see? What was your encounter?
This was about, I think it's about 5-6 days into the holiday, because we had like, I actually checked it all out. Richard Freeman's just written a recent book where I've sort of checked all the exact timings out and everything, but I often forget them myself, but until I check. But we were basically just come from Willow Creek, but the campsite we were at was about 40-odd miles away, and it was down a logging road that was very, very long. I think, you know, the logging road, oh goodness me, I can't remember how long it was now. Something's about it's place going out of a place called Orleans, which is like a villagey small town place, and, you know, quite a large village really, we call it in England, but they and it never got finished. So I think it's Orleans Gasquet Road, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Never got finished, so there's not many people go down it, but it's actually quite good. There's still some logging there, and it's sort of quite a good road to go on, but it is like a logging road, and it's wide enough for 2 logging trucks. It was 22 4. It was still light when we saw them. It was quite good visibility, and the road was quite wide. And I saw on the one side of the road, it was all completely burnt out trees because there'd been a really bad forest fire. The other side, because the road was so wide, it hadn't actually made it across. So from a distance, I saw what I thought were 2 weird-looking men were running upright, and they just looked like men, and it looked like 2 very large men in all-in-one dark overalls with a hood up, running with bare feet, with a bare face, bare hands. And I just said to my friend, "What are those idiots doing? Must be killing their feet," you know, not realizing what I was seeing. And it almost looked like they had, they were hunched over, and it looked like almost my brain was rationalizing, because, you know, when you see something, you just sort of try to fit it into your paradigm of what you know. And I rationalized it was these 2 men in these all-in-one sort of, it looked like those, almost like those overalls you get mechanics have, the throwaway papery type things. And I rationalized they were drug runners, and they got like this rucksack underneath, or some loads of drugs on a thing across their shoulders. It looked like they were almost carrying something, they're so hunched over. So I said to my friend, "Oh, what are they, drug runners? And what are they running barefoot for, the idiots?" And my friend Tom just starts laughing at me, and he said, "Well, you're looking for them now, you've seen them." And I'm going, "What do you mean?" And then suddenly they'd sort of, from a distance, they'd run to the right into these burnt out tree area. And suddenly I heard Tom yell, and suddenly right in the middle of the road, you know, a really relatively short distance, these things were suddenly there again, and they literally stopped for about a second and a half. And he slammed on his brakes and did an emergency stop. And I estimated when he stopped, they were about 15 feet away. He estimated they were about 20 feet away. So very similar, our judgments. Anyway, I'm just sort of looking at these things thinking, you know, my brain is still sort of going overtime thinking, what the hell are they? But I was still trying to fit it. My brain was still trying to fit it in a paradigm of these are weird looking humans, and the faces were extremely human-like. I didn't expect them to look like that. The nose was like a proper nose, but it was quite flattened, quite large, and you could see these very deep sunken eyes. But what got me thinking they weren't human, there was no white. I couldn't see any white. They were just like these big eyes, a lot bigger than a human's, but all dark. You sort of hear this thing about those those sort of things they have in America with the demonic sort of children with the dark eyes. They look like that.
Kids.
That's it. Yeah, it was. The eyes were just like that. There was no, you couldn't see any whites. Although they didn't look, demonic or anything. But that's what the eyes were like. And then you've got like a domed head, like a gorilla, and then you've got a very big jaw, and the skin was like slight disagreement between me and Tom. I thought it was a very dark olive color. He said he thought it was more pinky, and he actually had a reconstruction done by a very good Spanish artist of what we saw, and it looked very, very similar to what I thought I saw. I thought the color of it was like hair, not fur, so it's like it was quite sort of matted in areas. And I was still trying to rationalize, and I was, sort of my brain was thinking, oh, that looked like unworked fiberglass, but it would have been hair, but it almost looked like some sort of fiberglassy, fiberglass before you smoothed it over when they work on cars. And that's what it looked like, but it obviously was hair rather than fur. And I thought they were very, but thinking about it, it was very dusty around there. So they're probably black or very dark other color with dust on them. Tom thought the one, because one was a lot larger than the other. I said they were 6.5 and 7 foot. Tom said they were 7 and 7.5 foot. One, Tom said, was an older male, and Tom Contrast's seen them a lot of times. And he said the one was an older male, and he could see some grey on it. I thought it was dust, but there was a bit of difference in opinion there. But basically, we were describing the same experience. Arla, our friend, was in the back. She woke up right at the end and saw the back of them, but she's seen them loads of times as well. So for her and Tom, it wasn't a big experience. For me, I was a gibbering wreck for about 2 days. Couldn't really come to terms with it. Was trying desperately to rationalize. They were just really ugly blokes, because they did actually look like a really ugly version of Xavier Bardem, the actor. That's what the closest the face is. And I kept thinking, oh, they're really ugly guys. They're not sort of, he's actually quite handsome, but I just rationalized they were ugly versions of him. I still couldn't cope with it. So I knew what I'd seen, but your brain just can't cope with it. And it was almost like I was reliving it like a car accident. We nearly did have an accident, so it was obviously to hit them, so that was quite traumatic. But your brain tries to fit it into what you know. And it was a couple of days in before I finally acknowledged what I'd seen, and I started shaking all over and was, nervous wreck for a couple of hours. It's like seeing a unicorn in the middle of the road, basically. Your brain can't cope with it, really.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I know you studied cryptozoology as well. How do you personally think, feel about the fact that there is something out there that you've now seen, and yet we actually don't officially, we don't know about it, do we?
I think the American government knows very much. I mean, the Rangers,
I guess in terms of,
we got very defensive asking about Bigfoot. Quickly change the subject in a way they wouldn't do about other subjects. And, we've heard that, they're told not to speak about it. Loggers are told not to talk about it, then get in trouble, because it's I don't know whether they are endangered. I think there's evidence, there's a lot of them are seen. I think they're very good at avoiding us, but I think they're not that endangered. There's quite a few like Texas have got them. So, but I think, if they acknowledge they're there, it's basically going to affect the logging. They'll have to, you know, it's semi-endangered animal, they'll have to stop logging. And that, I think it was a short-eared or long-eared owl. There was an owl they found in Oregon, and they lost absolutely, you know, massive amounts of the economy because of the logging. And people lost their livelihoods there because they had to stop logging in the area. So I can see why they were worried about the impact. I think unlike a bird, I think actually the logging probably protects them, to be quite frank, because it stops people accessing a lot of areas. You know, they do, you know, there's evidence they go up trees, but I think generally they just move away from the logging, and it gives them a level of protection. And I think also the religious, you know, views as well. People might be quite challenged by something that, you know, could be a missing link. So I think that's going to cause quite a few issues for people. I think that, you know, that is going to cause a few issues, and people, you know, might not accept that. Some people, Bigfoot, as I know, have got quite religious views, are happy calling it a regressed man, and that's okay. But as long as we're going to protect it, and I think there's obviously are issues disclosing it, because, you know, people could go around panicking and shooting it. You know, and it's the issue: is it good that it's general knowledge, it exists? You know, is it better that people think it's a myth? You know, it's one of those issues. But
so, how do you feel about the things like the one footprint? You know, when you can only find one footprint, and the people that say it disappeared, or they got zapped, or these other kind of symptoms and evidence that sometimes isn't rational or doesn't feel rational, that we can only find one footprint sometimes.
I mean, sometimes the substrate is only suitable for one. You know, sometimes you sort of, when I was in California, the second time with Tom, which is when we saw, that was literally found out afterwards, 2.5 miles where Bluff Creek shot was taken, which didn't realize at the time. But the ground there was almost impossible for footprints. But then we got into the campsite, and the ground was a lot more suitable, and there was quite a few around the campsite as well, because there's some sandy bits, the sort of molehill areas there, and I think it proves in there were molehills. I don't know, it could be another roads, but they were quite suitable for footprints there. But other areas, when we went in, sort of walked up one of the sort of hills or small mountains there, it wasn't really suitable, and I did find the front part of some toes and the back end of a heel that I just happened to spot. But that was all we saw, because you often find, you know, it's just not suitable. But there is, I mean, Toby Johnson, you know, Tommy once, you know, he's found footprints that just suddenly stop and don't go anywhere. And it's like, oh, what happened? Where did it go? You know, there's no trees there. It couldn't have gone up a tree, because I know David Paulides has written a lot of books. The ex-police detective said that, you know, sometimes they've been, when he was involved in being called out, they think they went up trees, and they could hear some movement up the tree. So, but, you know, Toby said, you know, there was nothing like that. It just stopped. And I think it could suggest fakes, you know, but not always, you know. The London Trackway, I think they were pretty strange, and they now pretty sure they're fakes. Toby's one of the first people there. People like Tom Powell were there as well. But, you know, they're pretty sure they were faked, but they were quite well done, you know. Sort of, so, and the zapping, yeah. I mean, when I was went out with Tom to the Californian spot where I saw the Bigfoots, we had an incident at night. It was about 2-3 in the morning, and Kathy, one of the ladies, she'd insisted on camping away from us, and we're saying, you know, is this a good idea? You know, you could be taken by a Bigfoot, or there's mountain lions around with, you know, bears. And she said, oh, no, I want an encounter. Anyway, it's about 2-3 in the morning, and I was quite deep sleep, so I wasn't the first person to wake up. We heard this scream. I heard this scream. I could hear Tom going, "You're okay. You're okay. I'm coming." And Tom's quite significantly disabled. I've never seen Tom move so fast. He was like really moving fast and just about not tripping up. But he got out the tent, and I could hear him go, "Oh, you're okay, Kathy. You're a big lad, aren't you?" and you could hear this really heavy bipeded thing moving, and you could hear then you could hear Tom's steps, and Tom's quite a big chap, yet his footsteps are making nothing like the sound of this other thing that was moving away. And I've sort of trained myself to sort of distinguish between bipeds and things with sort of 4 legs like a bear. There's a sort of different sound, or deer, but this was definitely a biped. You could hear this big thing moving away, and Tom's footsteps as well, and Kathy still wasn't making any, and she was going, I can't move. And I finally got myself out of my sleeping bag. I couldn't get the zip done, and other people were shooting out the tent, and I didn't see it go away. I wasn't fast enough. But Tom said he saw a Bigfoot walk away from Kathy, and she said she came out of a tent and literally whacked into one. And it was so dark, because it must have been right, and she got up a bit fast, and this thing didn't anticipate it. And she said suddenly it started to make this rumble, and she could move, literally could move. Now, Kathy's to the point of silliness, and I've told her off for this, not being scared of them. I've said to her, they are potentially they could eat you. I think generally they don't. They tend to stick their own prey, but if you ran and they didn't know what you were, potentially, they're just going to grab you. So, I said to her, you need to be careful, Kathy, but she's not scared of them at all. But this time she was, because she said she couldn't move, and she still couldn't move for ages afterwards. Her legs, she said, literally had seized up. She couldn't move. Something had frozen at the spot. And I don't think it was a fear response. I've seen fear responses, and it didn't look, her legs were just stiff. It's really weird.
Right.
But yeah.
Did anybody else experience anything in the while you were with the other team? The team when you saw the two, did you pick up anything then?
No, we didn't get any feelings of being zapped. I mean, we were in a car, you see, so it might not have affected us. But I've been speaking to sort of Tony Lombardo, who did the documentary in Omarwing. He let me show it for the first time a Lapis conference in UK, not been shown before. And I've got sort of talking to him about this, and I've got interesting theories about it, because he was very much in a documentary, and I was talking to him about afterwards. He said, like, a newbie who the Bigfoot's not familiar with, who's not been to that site before, they'll be in a tent, and there'll be evidence there's a Bigfoot outside, and the person who's the newbie who'll be the one who'll be zapped, and not anybody else in the tent. So it sounds like they're able to sort of, I mean, whales and dolphins can use sonar in a quite specific way, and I'm querying, is it a type of sonar? Which sounds really weird, but I have actually, it's well known that some blind people, and you can see there's one guy, I think he's still on YouTube, who's completely blind, who can ride a bicycle using a sonar. He's developed his own sonar.
Yeah.
Can use it. He just makes a series of clicks, and then he waits for the bounce back, and it tells him where he is. And I actually met a woman up north during my work, who I was in working in an NHS department at the time, and I went into the waiting room, and this woman's sitting there, and I heard this clicking sound, and I said to her, I think there's a bat in here or something. And I was like, I was looking for this animal, and she said, I'm really sorry, that's me. And I said, oh, okay. And she went, oh, I use sonar. And I just went, oh, okay, yes you do. And then the worker who was seeing her walks in and said, yeah, she's amazing, she can find a way around just using this sonar. And they gave me a little demonstration, and then it turned out a week later the worker saw her in a different room, and she said that she just was able to walk straight to the chair, started clicking, was able to walk straight to the chair without even asking where it was. And this woman was completely blind. There wasn't any peripheral vision or light sensitivity or anything. So we know it's possible in us. So, it could well be they're using something like that. And people describe with the infrasound very weird feelings, and I've had a dolphin, I had a dingle dolphin sonar me up and down. I was playing with it and suddenly he came really close to me. His head was literally like a foot away and he starts the buzzing, the sonar. And oh, it's weird. It makes all your organs wobble and it's really weird and you get a bit spaced. And, you know, we know that sperm whales kill with it. They actually, you know, kill things with it and stun giant squid. And there's been cases of people trying to rescue them who are stuck in nets and they start panicking and using it. And there's one guy who described his organs. You could feel his organs starting to rupture and he quickly had to kick away. And then the whale, I think, realized what was happening and realized it was hurting him and stopped it and let him, you know, release it without using it. So they're pretty powerful things, you know, so sonar's pretty powerful with animals. And, you know,
I've had recordings, you know, audio where they can click a lot when they're talking, or, you know, I've heard lots of clicks and pops, and I don't know if that's part of something they're putting out, like you say.
You listen to some of the primitive, I'm saying primitive, but the anthropologists say they're primitive. I don't think they're primitive at all. But some of the languages, very ancient languages from Africa, some of the Bushmen languages, there's a lot of clicks and slaps with the tongue. And they're acknowledged to be, you know, some of the early languages, they still use them. So that's quite interesting. And you hear the Sierra sounds and you do hear those, you know, the tongues being, you know, there's clicks and very similar sounds to the, you know, some of these languages that are acknowledged to be very ancient languages. So it's quite interesting stuff. Yeah.
So, you know, if they do have a language and we know they're intelligent, what do you think they are? Where do you think they've come from? Or
it's difficult to say. I mean, what I saw, the closest match, I would say, was Homo habilis. The face definitely wasn't ape-like. There was elements of ape-likeness with a domed head, like sagittal crest type look to it. But the nose was very human. The general face was quite like a primitive human. A lot of the images of the hominids like Homo habilis, it looked very, very similar. I think the closest one I've seen, I don't know whether you've seen the cover of the book Enoch, which was Autumn Williams. She sort of had this correspondence with a man who reckoned he'd sort of befriended a Bigfoot. And the cover on the front, I think it's actually her own artwork, isn't it? I think, from what I remember, I think it's actually she's an artist as well. But it's, you know, you look at it, you think it's photograph. I mean, it's freaky, but that's very, very close to what I saw.
It's a good. I've got that book actually, and I'd like to think they look like that, you know.
Yeah, and she gives some really good tips at the end. She said, "Don't go, you know, in camo gear and trying to, you know,
I think it was
after them because you become a predator for them.
Yeah,
they've seen you as a predator. If you just make yourself interesting, you're more likely to get an interaction and make yourself non-threatening and don't wear camo." Because she said they're intelligent enough to know camo is associated with hunters and things being shot. So they're not going to come near you. Whereas, you know, just wear bright clothes, they can see you and do very predictable behaviors and interesting behaviors that will attract them in. And she said, just stay in your campsite. They'll come into you, you know.
Yeah, that's it. That is it's not a fiction, is it? It's a true account, isn't it? The correspondence she had with the guy.
She said she wasn't. I think she said she's hoping it was. A lot of the descriptions of stuff that other people have described after, you know, she never met the guy. She said, you know, he didn't send her any images, yet he claimed to have them. But, you know, and she said she didn't know whether he was an amazing fantasist, but the story, she said, was incredible. And it's very similar and what, you know, a good example of habituation. So you know, a lot of people who have done habituation, who I feel have, you know, genuine, who I've met who've done it, said that, you know, very, very similar stuff to what he's talking about. So, and very similar, think about the mountain gorillas, how they habituated them. Very, very similar stuff. They'll gradually get onto the edge of the territory, and they'll stay there as long as the silverback can tolerate them. They'll move out again, then they'll move a little bit closer, and they take absolutely months to do it. You know, I've sat in with mountain gorillas in the Congo, and, you know, it's amazing. You just be in an hour and they're just not even oddly, you know, they'll come and have a look at you, but it's, you know, they're just completely habituated. And this is what these people are aiming at, really.
Yeah, that must have been incredible. Being with
It was scary. It was really
imagine.
scary. And going back, you know, to the issues of Bigfoots abducting women, and, you know, we had one of our ladies, a lady called Mogsy, who was a Maori, sadly not with us because she sadly got killed on the next trip, which is really sad. But she actually had one of the young adolescents trying it on with her. We had to call the tracker and get her rescued. It was getting a little bit hairy because the silverback was looking over as if to say, she's mine if she's anybody's. And we could tell she was in the middle of all this, and we could see the silverback was reacting. We could see this adolescent male was getting a little bit frisky with her, and we had to quickly get the tracker and get her away. But you know, it can happen, and there's cases of orangutans in some of the reserves in Borneo actually raping some of the people. So, you know, they will, you know, that will happen. So, you know,
yeah. Well, if you know, if it's right that the DNA, whatever DNA has been taken and tested, and it's saying that the female side is human, then it sounds like something like that has happened at some point with some creature, that we obviously don't know what the eternal side is.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, is that the is that the Melba Ketchum stuff? Yeah, I mean, I read Sykes' write up on that. I don't know. I mean, it could be it's one of these where the American government won't acknowledge it again, but you know, there's a lot of, I did real Professor Brian Sykes' stuff. Brian sort of worked with us at the CF and he was very skeptical of Melba's analysis. He said there seemed to be a lot of you know, contamination of the DNA. He didn't feel, but then again, you know, I know people who know and said she was one of the people on the teams looking for trying to identify bodies in the 9/11 thing. So she, you know, she's obviously a acknowledged scientist. So I don't know what to believe, really. I don't think it. She ended up with oh dear, who's the guy who's very controversial about the Bigfoots? Oh dear, I can't remember the chap who's it's gone up my head now. The chap who's faked a lot of, they suppose has faked a lot of the Bigfoot stuff.
Todd Stanley.
Yeah, that's it. Well, she got involved with him, and unfortunately, I don't think that helped her reputation. So, I think, you know, I think at the time people thought, and there is a lot of evidence, a lot of his stuff is faked. So, I don't know. She might have got involved with the wrong crowd, but I'm a little bit. It sounds a little bit too good to be true. Some of her analysis, mind you, there's that new. Did you see the thing about the Yeti DNA? That was quite interesting.
No, is that recent?
Yeah, it was. I think it was, the program was last year, about a year and a half ago. Just trying to remember the name of the program. It was the vet who was the oh dear, I'm hopeless. I've got no name memory whatsoever, so I have to apologise, folks. But he did the Bigfoot files, which Professor Brian Sykes was on originally, and they went out to Bhutan, and they actually were able to interview one of the princes, because it turns out he's really into Yeti hunting, and he doesn't hardly ever do interviews, but he did actually agree to an interview, and he said, "Oh, thank you. I'm glad somebody's taking this seriously," because he's actually created a reserve in Bhutan for Yetis. So he's like the land dedicated to them. So he's really seriously into it. And they'd had a sighting of a Yeti in the area, this one area, and they did find what looked like footprints when they went out the helicopter, but they were all starting to get altitude sickness because it was so high up there. Anyway, they were quickly trying to collect samples before they all collapsed, because obviously going up, not acclimatizing yourself is pretty dangerous. And they've got a lady who collects environmental DNA. And basically you can collect DNA from mud and collect DNA from water. And they took water samples from near where the footprints had been found and the Yeti had been sighted. And they analysed it and found something that wasn't human and it wasn't ape. It was in between. And it was like quite a good DNA sample. So right. That was pretty good evidence. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. That sounds
interesting. Yeah, I mean, I can send you and you can put it up for the viewers, the title of the program. I can't remember the title, but it was in Bhutan anyway. If you've got Bhutan Yeti, you'll probably find it.
Yeah. I'm just going to hit a question now because it was put up before by 5 Hazel. Did you feel any PTSD from it? Did it take you anything to try and come to terms with what you've seen? Did you feel like it had affected you? And do you think Americans need counselling to help overcome their encounters? Because some people are having some terrifying encounters with these things.
I'm actually also, I'm a social worker by trade. I'm also a trained counsellor. I've done trauma, some training and working with trauma with people. And I would say my encounter, I did get similar effects to what you do with a car accident. I got intrusive imagery for quite a few months. They say it's only diagnosed PTSD when it's gone over 6 months. It's normal. You know, I was in the Nepal earthquake and 7.9 earthquake, obviously very traumatizing. I got basically I got a lot of flashbacks and I got intrusive imagery. I was very jumpy around loud noises like lorries and freaked a bit when I saw helicopters for a while. So that's normal. It's when it goes after over 6 months, it's when it carries on. I think some of these experiences can be really traumatizing. I mean, my most recent one, I went out with a friend from Sasquatch Summit, Brooklyn Francesco, and we basically went to a area where so Johnny, who runs the summit, told us that there was they'd had solid Bigfoot sightings for 2.5 weeks. It was 2.5 miles away from the summit. It was great. So we went down this, picked a random logging road, starts making the sounds, wood knocks, and I was doing the whoops they make. And suddenly a little pine cone was thrown. Well, we heard initially, going step back a bit, Brooklyn heard a growl. We heard the undergrowth move and then he heard a growl. Initially we panicked, we thought it was a bear, and it wasn't. It's a very narrow little logging road. It's quite bizarre actually. I thought, how would you get a truck down it? Even a car would be a bit pushed. But anyway, and anyway, he heard a growl and oh my God. So we were panicking, it was a bear, and suddenly a pine cone got thrown at our feet. So I said, it might have just fallen off the tree. And then a stone went in front of my face. And we thought, oh my God, it's got hands. So we were starting to panic. We thought it was a human or a Bigfoot, basically. No, it can't be anything else. And then we made the mistake of panicking. Brooklyn pulled his machete, which is a bad idea. I swung the torch around and suddenly a rock, something the size of a small breeze block came hurtling. And then we were out there and it was thrown with such force, it actually went into the ground, and it was hard ground. It was winter. It was end of November. And it literally smashed every little stone it hit. Some of them were hard little stones and they're quite big. So I thought, whoa, out of here. And we just ran. So, and that was quite, I know we were quite shook up about that. That was too close for comfort. Brooklyn saw the projector and he said this thing was 4.5, 5 feet away from us. That was scary. That really was scary. The other one in the car, it didn't scare me. It was just freaky. But although I do get intrusive imagery from that occasionally if somebody shows me an image, or but it's you know, I can see if somebody had a really unpleasant encounter, like there's people said they've been chased, and I had coffee with Cindy Dozen. Do you know she's a lady who got chased down the road by one?
No.
One lady. She's been on quite a few programs, and I met her at the summit, and I started having a chat with her over coffee, and she was talking to me. You could visibly see her leg was shaking, talking to you, and I said, "Oh, are you okay with talking about it?" And she goes, "I'm okay, but it, you know, I've got, you know, it did traumatize me quite badly." And she'd basically gone up a hill, and she suddenly saw this deer nearly sent her bowling over, and the deer weren't scared of her. And she thought, well, if they're not scared of me, they're wild deer. What's chasing them? You know, they were just trying to get past her. And then she thought, I don't want to meet what's chasing them. So she turned and ran herself. And as she got onto the road, something was making a sound like a gorilla screaming at her and shaking the undergrowth. And she could see the silhouette of what looked like a big gorilla, which was obviously going to be a Bigfoot, really. And she just about made it to the car and just about got in the car and then just, you know, went off. But she said it was running along the side of her behind the undergrowth, screaming and shaking the undergrowth. Very similar to what a silverback male gorilla does, you know, so there's evidence they might be apes or they might be primitive hominid, but that's very similar behavior. That we actually had that done to us in the Congo, because one of the girls went behind a tree, and you're not meant to go out the site, and it actually did sort of out of a chest beat and did a charge against the side of us, and, you know, shook a bit of undergrowth. So that's what they do, you know. And in terms of the question, yeah, I mean, if you've had, you know, a really scary experience, yeah, somebody might need, you know, particularly nasty experience. And you know, you might have to have treatment for PTSD, because especially if, you know, there's counts of people having to run for their lives with them, and, you know, they've obviously gone into the territory and there's probably young there, and a lot of animals will attack.
It's not just that easy, though, is it, to go somewhere? And I think that's the point, is these things are out there and scaring the heck out of people. And
well, that's it. I think a lot of the reactions from them, I think if you behave like a prey animal, I mean, if you're running and it can't clearly see what you are, you know, like any predator, you're a potential prey animal, which is why there's the issues with the pumas, with joggers. And, you know, if you're a bear, you don't run with a bear, you sort of stand your ground. Although I've had a hyena go for me, and I tell you, you try standing your ground with a predator coming at you, you can't do it. Your primitive brain, your legs are working before you know what's happening. I remember having this hyena where I went in Africa, and I had a hyena charge me. Just suddenly came from behind a bush, and I was running, and I just was running before I knew I was running, and I could hear this screaming, and I thought, who's screaming? And I realized it was me, because, you know, it was freaky experience. But luckily it saw the truck and it backed off, and me and this girl were just legging it. But so it's easier said than done. But yeah, I mean, I think some of it's the unexpected, isn't it? You know, you're not expecting, and your primal fear comes in of this very big animal. I think, you know, some people have genuine unpleasant experiences. I think probably when they've intruded near the young, or it's mistaken them for something prey. So yeah, I mean, I think, you know, somebody, you know, I think that it's best to see a psychologist or, you know, psychiatrist about it and get an opinion. Is it PTSD or is it normal trauma reaction? Because you do the stuff, you know, you get at the beginning is it is very similar to PTSD. It's when it carries on and you can't let go of it, you've got PTSD. That's the problem.
And
the normal healing bit of the brain working, but it can sometimes doesn't switch off in some people.
Do you think the longer people leave it, the harder it is to deal with it, or is it a lot easier for people than they think if they got help?
I think, I mean, I was involved. One of my I used to work in psychology years ago, and one of my managers was actually an expert, a psychologist in psychological debriefing, which was the done thing at the time. He was one of the pioneers of it, and that, you know, as soon as you have a trauma, you're meant to talk about it and talk through what happened. But they've now shown since that actually the army guys So I was in the Nepal earthquake, and we got taken in. The army, British Army, looked after us, and the Gurkhas, and there was a couple of guys, amazing chaps actually, and English guys who were actually head of the British fitness of the British Army, just happened to be there, and amazing Gurkhas looking after us. But they said when we got in from the earthquake, they basically got us all working, suddenly doing all this physical task. And this one girl said, "What are you doing? We're traumatized. We've just been in an earthquake." And he said, "I'm stopping you getting PTSD, because they now show that distracting yourself as soon as you can in like tasks, like they got us putting up a big army tent, actually helps to stop you being traumatized, especially physical stuff." And I think there's I think what's the book? It's Waking the Tiger. I think it's Stephen Levine. Might have got the first name wrong, but anyway, he showed that, you know, by people who are involved in trauma and did physical stuff, and you know, and often sort of were able to physically respond to the trauma, were less likely to get PTSD. And the theory is it's like a blocked action potential of movement that gets like stuck in the brain. That's one theory. So but yeah, I mean, I think, you know, people feel, you know, there's they can't let go of it, you know, and it's you know, they do need help, I think, you know.
Yeah.
But it is, you know, traumatic reactions are a normal, healthy response to your brain coming to terms with it. But if it carries on, yeah, you definitely need help. And depends on the level, you know. If it's absolutely horrific, you know, might be best to get help, you know, straight away. But
everybody deals with stuff differently, I guess, don't they? Some people just like to keep busy, and you know, which kind of maybe softens the impact of whatever you're trying to take.
You've got to process it, you know. So yeah, because basically, like, flashbacks are like primitive brain memories. They're sort of your limbic brain, sort of primitive brain, really. That's what they are. So you've got to like process it, and understanding it's half the battle, really. But you know, it's also to rationalize. You know, if you're in a car and you see the thing, it wouldn't, you know, it's very unlikely to have killed you, you know. So it's like sort of talking yourself through, isn't it? And thinking, you know, I might have seen an 8-foot high carnivorous ape, but I was behind, it was in a car, you know. So
yeah,
you know, that's what I did with the first sighting. It was scary, but I just thought, well, you know, I was in a car. Whereas the second one, I wasn't, and it was right in front of me down a logging road, so, or whatever it was, but it was highly likely, I think, a Bigfoot. You know, so that was the scary thing with that.
kettle of fish, isn't it?
Something could have very gone wrong if we hadn't have got out of there quick.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. How do you feel about do you hear any stories about Dogman?
Yeah, I mean, I do wonder whether it's a type of Bigfoot, because you get different facial features described. You get the ones are almost like quite human. I mean, in California they joke there's the pretty ones and the ugly ones. I think it's the I can't remember if it's the Hooper people there, First Nation. I think it's one of the tribes that says ugly ones and the pretty ones. But so there is obviously subtypes of ones that are more human-like and more ape-like. And I do wonder whether it's almost like a baboon type looking Bigfoot, whether it is a type of Bigfoot. I don't know. I mean, you know, First Nation people have talked about Dogmen, and I don't know whether, you know, whether it's a real animal or whether it's something supernatural.
Completely different characteristic. It's completely different characteristic as well, isn't it? It tends to want to scare people. You hear the Dogman accounts; they're the really scary encounter. I've not heard a one where it's just thrown a stone at someone and it, you know, expected it to go away. They seem to want to frighten people.
That's it. Yeah, it's not just inquisitiveness. Even though they mean inquisitive, it's, yeah, they're sort of quite, or is it the person's interpretation? Because it's difficult to tell, isn't it? I mean, I've listened to quite a few of the podcasts on Dogmen, and I'm thinking, you know, the person said, oh, it's got, you know, it was evil, but that's an interpretation, isn't it? You know, they've projected stuff onto it, and that can be the case with Bigfoots as well. And ghost people say, oh, it's demonic. Well, you know, how do you term something demonic? It's a difficult one. The Grants Pass incident, with, I know, 2 of the people involved with that, with the, I don't know if you've heard the story about the sort of Adam Davies, and various other friends of his were up on Grants Pass, and they saw this hologram type thing, which looked like almost like small Bigfoots behind it, and they felt it was possibly an alien portal and connected with Bigfoots. But some of them were saying it was demonic, others were saying it was neutral, and they were all watching the same event. So
it's where your mind's at, isn't it? It's what your beliefs are.
Yeah, exactly. And your religious beliefs, your cultural beliefs, a lot of these things, it's like with cultural interpretations of ghosts. You get a lot of people projecting their own stuff, and there's even some ghosts that are only seen by people of a certain culture, that other people can't see them. There's a very weird type spirit type thing, I think, from the Philippines, and it's like presents as a man with a horse's head that smokes, and only Filipinos can see it. It's never seen by Europeans. So you'll have a couple of Filipinos can see it, and the European person next to them can't see it. So very strange. But,
that's interesting. That actually is a good link to this question. Andy Gone Fishing. Do you think Squatches are drawn to certain people, like their energy or feeling or intention?
Yeah, I think definitely. Tom Control feels very much like this, feels if you've got good intention, and he's had loads of Bigfoot encounters, really warm, friendly guy, really positive towards them, got no fear or negativity. And same with friend Arla as well. She's has the same encounters, and she's not frightened of them. My friend Kathy as well, who ran into one, but obviously that got zapped. But I think that was too close to comfort with the Sasquatch. But I think, and it got to be a bit of a joke amongst some of my Bigfoot friends that I'm a bit of a Bigfoot magnet, because I keep, some people have been trained for years, and I've had loads of encounters, and is it my deodorant? It's sort of, am I not putting on enough? I don't know, but it's weird that I'm having, I just think I'm just been lucky, or is there something I'm doing that they like? I don't know. It's weird. It's like, it's quite unusual. You do get some, you definitely do get some people like Tom Control. He's had loads of encounters as well. So I think there's something perhaps we're doing that they like, or they're not threatened by. And there is, of course, as I've talked to you about before, there are, women, teams of women who go Bigfooting. There's, some suggestion that, the testosterone in men can quite, is a bit more threatening. There's obviously like the element of testosterone in male aggression, that they're actually a bit more threatened by male groups of Bigfooters. So the women tend to get some really good results because of that. But some men, like Tom Control, get really good results. So it's not always the case. But yeah.
Let's flip to the UK. What do you feel about Bigfoot in the UK?
I'm trying to be diplomatic here. I think there's possibly something paranormal. There's no way a living flesh and blood animal is around in the UK. It's just not big enough. I mean, I don't know whether, so I know there's quite a few American people watching this. I mean, some of these woods that it's supposedly been seen in are about 1.5 miles long, and that's it. I mean,
even if they were at one point, if they're populating, they're going to eventually start spilling out, surely. That's my thought. If they're keeping out of sight so much.
Yeah, I don't think they could. The UK is just not big enough. There's not. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you just get far more sightings. I mean, you get absolutely hundreds of Bigfoot sightings a year, and it's a very consistent animal that's described. I mean, a lot of these UK Bigfoot signs have been explained away. You've got escaped. I think the one was very lightly, the one I saw in that the one the shot in the park was very lightly escaped chimpanzee. It looked exactly like a chimpanzee. There was the one with a guy who the woman was walking through, somebody's walking through a forest, and they saw this orangey type coloured one having a sip of water out of a pond, and a guy who'd been to a fancy dress admitted it was him, and he said he was still a bit drunk, decided to take a shortcut, still with his suit on, through this wood, and then because he was dehydrated and still a bit drunk, God, I'm really thirsty, that pond looks a bit tempting, took a cover with his face mask on and everything, a mouthful of water, and of course member of public saw him, and it looked just like it's hilarious. And we had one reported to the Centre for Fortean Zoology. I'm involved with Richard Freeman, my friend, was telling me about where the police just outside Plymouth, they found a guy in a ditch and they breathalyzed him, no drugs in his system either, and he swore he just swerved to avoid a Bigfoot in the middle of the road. Now this is Plymouth, and hang on. And he said it was really tall, and he was freaked out, and they believed him, so they started looking for this thing. And it wasn't until a couple of weeks later they discovered there'd been a Star Wars convention at a local hotel, and there was somebody dressed as Chewbacca who was really, really tall. He was well into his late 6 foot, height, 6'6", whatever, or the tall guy anyway, very tall guy. And he got really drunk and he'd been staggering around the road, and this is what it was. So a lot of these are, they're explained away. I think there's other, Nick Redfern's book about the man monkeys, there's, there are some really weird things about sort of things. There was one that jumped onto a coach, wasn't it? Onto the guy on the coach. And I think that was beginning part of the late 18 something or the century. And it could well have been an escaped chimpanzee or a gorilla, I think most of them could be explained away. Otherwise, could be, paranormal,
We're struggling out with I mean I don't know what's out there, and if anyone's keeping anything secret in the UK, but just even soft evidence like prints and stuff like that, we don't really have a lot, do we?
No, a lot of them are probably people barefoot, because people will go barefoot as well. And I think, it's the case in the US. You have to be careful, and obviously with the US as well, the hind foot of a bear looks just like a Bigfoot print, although the actual big toe is the opposite side, and you get claw marks with a bear. But in certain substrates, you might be easily mistake them. So, I think, human prints, unless you really know what you're looking for. But, I think most of them aren't. There probably was wild men, and there's a lot of medieval accounts of wild men, but I think they're well gone, from the islands.
So do you think woodwose and Bigfoot are two different things?
I think the woodwose would more likely similar to the Russian almasty, because there's a lot of accounts still in Sweden, northern Sweden, I think it's north west Sweden and top of Norway and Finland. There are trolls seen still. I think it was about the 90s, might have been later than that. A ranger and two tourists were just 10 miles into the Russian border near Finland. Were just into Russia, 10 miles, just near the Finnish border, and they came back very shook up and all said they'd seen a troll. So were really genuine about it. And I think they're more likely to be the what the original woodwose is more likely to be the Russian almasty, or almas as it's called, I think, in different areas of the world, which is possibly, a lot of people think. I've been out looking for it myself in Kabardino-Balkaria with a zoologist called Gregory Panchenko and his friend Anatoly. They're Ukrainians.
Okay.
They both seen it, and they described it the closest match to Homo erectus, they said.
Right.
And I think you look at a lot of the early woodwoos images in churches. They're very similar to Homo erectus. So, yeah.
That's interesting. I've got a question here from my mate, Captain Daz. Daz, you've seriously got to buy a new laptop. I asked him to help me check my mic tonight, and it took 20 minutes for his laptop to warm up. So I suggest he gets a new one. What does Jackie think about UK cryptids, and has she ever researched in the UK?
Well, I've obviously just answered the question about the UK Bigfoots. We've definitely got big cats, 100%. I've not seen one. I've interviewed 2 police officers who saw one the other day. And we've definitely got, I have to be careful how I say this, but a certain zoo owner in the southwest has slightly drunken state admitted to releasing them. So we know where we do know roughly where. I can't say, but I think people know who he is. Yeah, there's a, we've got a mission to releasing pumas and leopards. So we found we had a Centre for Reporting Zoology conference up North Devon, and we had CF said loads of reports of a leopard in the woods. So people at the conference went out collecting hair samples, and we had Dr. Lars Thomas from Copenhagen, zoologist who's one of the top 3 people in the world analysing hair samples. Absolutely amazing at it. And he said 100% some of these were leopards hair samples. Because people said, oh, what's the percentage chance? And he said, I'm not saying percentage, 100% leopard. I'm actually conversing. I have to be careful so I can't give away his area, but there's somebody so South Central England from one of the wildlife trusts I'm consulting with at the moment. They seem to have a puma on their wildlife reserve. He's shown me footprints that look very much like a puma. He's heard it baying, and then he's partner spotted a sheep carcass up a tree the other week and sent me a photo. Wow. So pretty well sure there's a puma there now after finding there's nothing else that drags a sheep up a tree unless it's a big cat. It's far too heavy for anything else. And occasionally you'll get poachers or try to do false trails if they're killing stuff, but a sheep up a tree, that's a little bit over the top of the poacher. So and he's heard the baying sound they make, and they're calling for each other. So he's pretty sure. So he's, regularly conversing with a gentleman to try to find more evidence of this. And I might go overseas. So it's quite cool. That
about 10 years ago, about 10 years ago, I was followed one night by something on the other side of a hedge that was growling. I could only put it down to a big cat, just because of the sheer strength of the growl. Even though it was low, it was very, I'd never heard anything like it. Wasn't a sheep, a cow, a dog, or anything. When you're hearing something that shouldn't be in a field where sheep.
Yeah, it's quite loud. I mean, occasionally a badger will growl at you, and that can be quite loud. But badgers, normally the size of a dog. I think you judge it, wouldn't you? Really? So yeah.
I had no idea what it was because it was literally on the other side of a hedge. I was like on a bridle path trying to walk home, and it kind of walked parallel with me all the way down to the road, growling and
you see, a badger would do it for a while, but it quickly, because they're quite timid. They usually go off unless they've had a head injury or something. But I wish I'd have gone back. It might well have been a cyclone.
I wish I'd have gone back because it was snowing. It was actually Christmas Day. It was in the evening. It was like 10 o'clock. I didn't think about it back then. It was just something you put to the back of your head, and then
you could have got eaten if you had. So it might not be a good idea. So I mean, you do have to watch yourself with these things. And I know some of the ones on Dartmoor. I know a guy's a professor at Exeter University, and he bought some land on Dartmoor, and he was whacking back the gorse, and as he turned round, the back of he's pretty sure it was a leopard, went into the bush. He won't go in his own now. He always insists on going with company. It really, really scared him, actually. He was telling me about it, and he was quite shock up telling me. And these police officers, I mean, they sort of, you know, I got chatting to them because I do badger patrols, and they just found out I was into this sort of stuff. And they said, "Oh, you know, don't mind telling you an experience we had." And they actually got out of the car with a tape measure, and they said, "There's no way it was a normal cat." I mean, you know, the middle of the tail and the body was going into the bush, and they said, you know, the half of it was bigger than a normal cat. You know, so they said it was definitely a big cat. Yeah,
yeah. I don't know why Carl's put this. Why do we have the same dream over and over? I don't know if you know how to answer that one.
Oh, I don't know. I was actually supervised by a sleep and dream expert in my first degree in psychology. So usually often trauma stuff, isn't it, really? Or block goals, I would say. But yeah, I mean, you can do that with trauma. You'll keep getting the same dream again and again because it's like it's traumatized and your brain's trying to cope with it. But also, you know, also if you know, supposedly if you've got a block goal, you know, you'll get the same dream again and again until you've sorted out and you've got what you want. So that's one of the things. So
let's go to like Cannock Chase area. The werewolves is supposed to be a hotspot for it. What do you think all that's about?
I was actually brought up literally a couple of miles away from Cannock Chase. I come from Great Worley, which is right on the edge of Cannock Chase. It's officially an area of Cannock. So yeah, I know Cannock Chase. That was where I spent most of my childhood, been to tree houses. I never encountered anything. I used to hang around a place mainly called Seven Springs, which is absolutely stunning. They had like the natural, you know, they've probably been taken over by the intruding crayfish now, but the non-native species we're having problems with. But at the time they had the English crayfish, and we used to catch them and put them back. And amazing place. I did hear a friend of mine did have, I won't name him, but him and his girlfriend told me of a really weird experience they had. And they were so traumatized, they couldn't fully describe it because they literally were becoming traumatized. And they said they were in a car once and they've just sat there chatting in the dark. And it was just getting twilight and they were, we'd better go in a minute. And suddenly they saw this sort of form of something. They described it partly horse-like, but it wasn't quite horse-like. It was almost like an entity. And they started telling me, and they couldn't even finish. They were so traumatized and they were shaking telling me. So there are some really weird things there. There was, I remember in the 70s, there was a serial killer who was killing a load of children there. So whether there's some sort of bad energy there that's created something, I don't know. Or it could have been the werewolf killing the children, I don't know. But I remember at school, we'll be terrified of leaving our teacher's side on the Cannock Chase case this thing got us. And of course, there was the werewolf up at Hull, supposedly, and it's probably just an escaped Alsatian, but a friend of mine, Peter Laws, the minister, as people might look him up, he's horror and thriller writer as well. He went up to investigate it. So there's been quite a few people trying to investigate that. I don't know about what was happening on Cannock Chase with the werewolf. What were the?
I think there was it's like a hotspot, I think, for reports of seeing werewolf-like creatures in that area. It seems to be maybe a portal down there. I think there's a lot of paranormal.
There's a lot of UFO sightings. I think there's Castle Rig, I think it's called. It's like Castle Rig. There's like a Neolithic ring that's you can like walk around the bottom of. They've sort of done it as a tourist attraction.
That's by me.
That's had loads of weird stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Castle Rig's near in Lancashire, isn't it? It's just.
Yeah, I can't remember what it's called. It's Castle. It might be Castle something. Castle Ring, I think it is. Castle Ring rather than Rig.
Yeah, I've been up there for the There is definitely some standing.
Yeah, it's a Neolithic ring. I think it's Castle Ring or something. Anyway, it's a Neolithic ring on Cannock Chase. You can look it up. I can't remember not 200% sure of the name, but that has loads of weird stuff happening around it. UFO sightings and all sorts.
Yeah. What do you think about Bigfoot being paranormal then, or having some sort of connection to I mean, we do hear lots of people talking about lights and orbs when they're seeing Bigfoot. Do you think?
I was really skeptical, but I was asked to give a talk on weird Bigfoot phenomena for Lapis, because that's the focus of their conferences, the slightly more unusual stuff. And I said, oh, I don't know whether I'll do this, you know, because it's like, you know, I'm not really into that side. I think it's a real flesh and blood animal. But it wasn't until I agreed to do the talk and started researching, I thought, whoa, some of this stuff's really weird. And there does seem to be a basis for it. And, you know, there's obviously infrasound stuff, which is very, very strange. You know, people saying they've fainted and had seizures and everything. And Bigfoot starts doing this humming thing. And I mean, you know, that's got a scientific basis, I think, you know, whether it is, I was saying earlier, it could be the sonar, or it could be, I mean, tigers are shown to use it, and elephants, and, you know, tiger trainers have been stunned by it. They can't move, you know. So we know that's a real phenomenon, and that's scientifically explained. But you get the cloaking stuff for the Bigfoots, and it's interesting in the film Predators, possibly. I know that's a thing that cloaks, but supposedly I've heard, I've not been able to find accounts of this, but the fact that they do get Bigfoots in South America, and then Bigfoot is described as cloaking. I have heard that one of the influences of the film Predator was Bigfoot's cloaking. So I don't know how true this is. I'm trying to find the evidence for it, but then again, you know, or is the cloaking Bigfoot idea influenced by Predator? You know, the movie. You do get these cultural influences, like with the mind speak stuff, where people say they can sort of, you know, they can telepathically communicate with the Bigfoots. It's interesting that seemed to start being talked about a lot. There was a paperback book called Neanderthal, or Neanderthal. There's about 3 different pronunciations for Neanderthals, but anyway, there's a book called it, and it's a very good science fiction book, actually. It's like really like Jurassic Parky type stuff, and these people discover this hill in valley, and there's these Neanderthals, and there's friendly ones and unfriendly ones, and some of them are cannibals, and they do use mind speak. Now, it's funny how everybody started talking about mind speak with Bigfoot right after this book. I can't find any reference to it being talked about before then. There might have been cases, but it's a bit, so it's, you know, suggesting, are we interpreting things in a certain way because of that? You know, or does the infrasound cause people to hallucinate and they hear voices? You know, that's more of a possibility, I think. But you know,
it's also quite far out, though, isn't it? It's also quite a far out thing to say, and it is difficult for people to talk about their encounters and things that are happening to them. And a lot of people who, like you say before, you stick to your own beliefs, so you have to force the narrative to that kind of way of telling your story. And I mean, I have talked to people who have seen that predator type behavior and mind speak and healing and communication. And you know, I wonder if a lot of people who've had experiences and talk about their experiences and not giving all the information, maybe they have experienced other stuff but are too frightened to admit it.
I think there's stigma, and there's still a lot of stigma admitting you've seen Bigfoot. There's a little bit less now, because I think people are starting to acknowledge a lot more that it's a real animal, and you know, and I think people thinking, well, there does seem to be something there, you know. But it's still a taboo to talk about the weirder stuff, like it is about UFOs. And there's all the stuff around UFOs with Bigfoots as well, where they've seen Bigfoot type things coming out of UFOs. And there's one theory that is it a pet of an alien that escaped? That's another thing, experiment. So there's all sorts of stuff, and some of that, you know, you start reading it, you think, whoa, there's too many accounts all describing the same thing. And the glowing red eyes, I mean, a lot of that I think is probably explained by reflection, you know, and the structure of the eye, or is it? they're luminous red, you know. It's like, ooh,
Yeah,
you know,
that they can actually
there's a lot of
project light. Yeah, I've heard that they're like they can project light, not just be lit up.
Well, I was
Tim
walking through a field of
Taraboccia.
cows. Oh, right, okay.
Go on.
Sorry, I didn't see that one.
He was just saying Tim Taraboccia. Yes, orbs form is how they travel and dematerialize form. Well, get in touch with me, Tim, so we can discuss this more and tell me how you know, because I'd be interested to find out more about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. This is often reported near Bigfoots. I don't know whether it's necessarily connected. Thinking I do something like earthquake lights, because you get Bigfoots in a lot of areas where there's larval tunnels, and the First Nation people say they hide in the tunnels. There's hollow trees in some of the areas. They retreat and how they can escape from people. And that was Laurie Simmons, her father, Wallace. That was his theory, that's how they escaped. The Native Americans always said that. But also volcanic areas, you do get earthquake lights, you get plasma phenomena, and it could be it's completely unrelated to the Bigfoots. It just, you know, making spurious correlations that they just happen to be there at the same time. And also, you know, you get things like fireflies. And one of my theories, it could be carrying you get luminous fungi. It could have been eating it and carrying it. And it's, you know, so there's all different possible explanations for the luminous side. So I don't think it's going to be different. We might find out at some point, but and the orbs, you know, the orbs near it, the luminous eyes, the orbs, you know, my theory, I had a very entertaining theory that everybody laugh is that, you know, Bigfoots are known to give off this really pungent smell, and also, not being crude, but basically farts. The smell is like, you know, pretty smelly fart smell, and there's some animals that use that as a defense. We know, we actually scientifically shown that some animals use it as a defense. Now, my theory is it's possibly a flammable gas, and if you're in a volcanic source, you're near a volcanic source, it could get ignited, and you could get literally a will-o'-the-wisp. Will-o'-the-wisps are like, you know, and of course you could possibly get those in that area as well. We get them on Dartmoor. I've actually seen one. They're amazing. They basically the marsh gas ignites, and it can look like a human. It can look like a ball of light. When I saw it look like a human, it freaked loads of us out. But you know, it's a theory. You know, it could just be, you know, farting Bigfoots igniting gas and like creating orb-like phenomena. And it could be, or there's just will-o'-the-wisp type phenomena near where the Bigfoots are. So, you know, and there is ignition sources, because you've got gases, ignition sources, you know, with a volcanic. That's my theory anyway. So.
Yeah. Well, there's so many things to consider, isn't there? I've always wondered what the smell thing is about. Like, I know there's not a switch, an on and off switch, but they seem to be able to. Well, I mean, it's not always every encounter people can smell them. And I kind of wonder.
Gorillas actually do it as a threat. They'll I fell in love when I was with the mountain gorillas. I didn't smell. I smelled a bit because they've got very bad gas all the while, but not a really bad one. But my friend Richard Freeman, actually cryptozoologist, used to be a zookeeper, and he'll tell you that gorillas, if they get upset enough, whoa, they let off a really foul smell. It's quite nauseous smell, and it's very similar, you know, to the smell that's been described with the Bigfoot. So we do know gorillas do it. So possibly Bigfoots do as well. So it's supposed to be when they're very, very angry and agitated. So
I can imagine that happening, actually. I've got one here from Undergone Fishing. Do you think there are any cryptids in the Highlands of the UK? And could Bigfoot live there? We hear about the grey man, don't we?
Yeah, I think that's probably more paranormal, actually. the way the grey man's described, it sounds like something paranormal, or, you know, it's often people on the mountains camping, and I think they're they're seeing possibly mist, or, you know, they're all a bit scared anyway because they've heard the story, and then they're inflating things. But I think, again, you know, there are a few. There's Caledonian Forest in Scotland. They are, I mean, if Americans came and saw them, they'd laugh. Our Dover Forest is, I think, the biggest one we've got is the New Forest, and I think it's about 25, 30 max. It's not very big at all. I don't think it's even that. And I mean, compared to American wilderness, we have nothing like that. You know, you can walk a lot across all our forests in, you know, half a day, really. It's, you know, nowhere near like an American wilderness.
Compare just to America, does it? The land
Oh,
we've got.
goodness, no. I mean, when I went to America, I was just like, you know, region, I realised there could be a Bigfoot. The wilderness area, it's vast. It's absolutely vast. And, you know, something as large as a Bigfoot. I mean, the big cats, I think, yeah, because they're really designed to sort of hide. They can go up trees easily. They're stealth predators, and I think Bigfoot is to a level, but he's just so large. I mean, he's just got, the trees aren't that big, you know, not like redwoods. He's got nothing, you know. Some of the oak trees are pretty large, but not, you know, there's not enough of them. They've all been, the really big ones have been chopped down. So, you know, there are some big ones, but not enough of them in a, you know, you get some of the beech forest possibly, but the undergrowth's not thick enough. It wouldn't be able to hide. So
they'd have to be pretty skinny if they lived over here, I think.
Oh, he'd have to be, yeah, anorexic Bigfoot, I think, per devil. I think even then he'd still be seen because it'd be so high. So, you know, I think no way. It's sort of, yeah.
No one's asked I'm surprised no one's asked, but what's been your most terrifying encounter? Not necessarily with Bigfoot, but with anything that's, you know, out there.
I had a weird one. I was doing a paranormal investigation. Place that sounds like it's in America, Salem Chapel, but it's not. It's in I think it's East Budleigh, in Devon, and it's this old, I think it's a Methodist chapel, a Presbyterian chapel, and I went in there, and I went upstairs, and I was on my own, and I'd actually it was originally I was there with David Wells, had been there originally. I've done quite a lot of stuff with the Most Haunted, and he was talking, and as he talked, we saw these little white, quite a couple of us saw these little white go past us like child height. And I said to David, "Did you see those?" And he said, "Yeah, I saw them." And there was also at one point a little doorway, and it used to be a school. We used to have a school there as well at this chapel. And at one point I saw a little head peer around the door, so I just legged it towards the door, and I ran thinking, this is a setup, there's a kid here. And there was just nothing there. There was nowhere for it to go, and there was just nothing there. I'd definitely seen a little head pop round. So that freaked me out. So I knew there was something there. And then a couple of people heard giggles, and I'm pretty sure it had a giggle at one point. And I thought, well, there's loads of us hearing these children giggling, and there was no children anywhere near the place. It's really weird. It's like just in the middle of on a road in the middle of nowhere. It's like ages before there's anything else. It's really weird location. So there was no, you know, it's not the place you normally have people walking around. It's quite a busy road as well, so quite really difficult to park. Some of us had to park a good distance away and walk down. So there was wouldn't have been any other children around. So that was quite strange. I went upstairs, I got up to the level, and there's all these pews around upstairs. So I just collapsed. My legs just completely went under me, as if something just hit me. I thought, oh, what the hell? And, you know, and I could feel myself going down, and I grabbed hold of this pew to stop myself from smashing my head. So I thought, whoa, that was, never had anything like that happen. So I got two people to come up with me when I went again to make sure they were either side of me, got onto the level, legs completely went under me again. So that was scary. That was really, really unpleasant. I've never had paranormal stuff like that, and I wouldn't want to redo it again, and it's made me a bit nervous about going there again. So I think that was one of the weirdest things I've had. So yeah,
that does sound scary. I just missed a question up here. Have you ever suffered from Trevor? Have you ever suffered from sleep paralysis? Or can you explain what that is?
Yeah, it's basically when you're certain sleep states, your body like stops you from moving, because otherwise you'd be, people who sleepwalk haven't got that switch off thing supposedly, and supposedly my understanding is sleep paralysis is a normal thing that we do, and often like if we start dreaming sort of in a semi-wake halfway between sleep and dreaming, it can get interpreted things like with the alien things. I'm abducted and I can move. Those are meant to be examples of sleep paralysis where the people are misinterpreting things because they're actually dreaming. I've had weird ones where I've had a temperature, and I always have this really weird thing. When I have a temperature, really high temperature, I see, now this is really weird, my Bigfoot stuff, it looks like a cross between a troll and an almasty staring at me in the corner, and I'm 2 to 3 years old, and he always looks the same, and he's got quite a big pot belly, and he's got big nose like a troll, like some sort of hominid, and he just stares at me, and I can be conscious, I can not be asleep, I can't move, but he's watching me, and he'll watch me for a long time, and then he'll just disappear. And I've had this up to adults. I had it, I think the most recent I did about 10-15 years ago, but it's freaky. I don't know what it is, but it's some entity that watches over me, and I can't normally see it, but it's very bizarre.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Weird. Yeah, really weird. And there's like another one I get when I'm really tired as well. I was talking to John Elliott, who's the singer from he's a friend of mine. I see this peach-coloured lobster coming towards me in the air. It's really weird. It's like, I think it's some sort of primitive brain phenomena that it like must hit this primitive bit of my brain, that this thing was probably something that would have attacked me when I was an amoeba. But I see it when I'm really tired. That freaks me out. So,
that's
dream. Just yeah, it's like just a pink lobster, peach lobster, and it's like, I think it's like one of these phenomena where it like hits that bit of your brain and you're sleeping and dreaming. But that's one where I can't move for a while. I'm screaming because these things going. It's very weird. I get that when I'm extremely sleep deprived. But yeah, these phenomena, and there's also theory, isn't there? There's some of these things. Bit similar to me seeing this peach lobster. This probably goes back to my primeval brain when I was an amoeba. It's like there's also the things about some of these things like black cats. People there's the researcher's name did a study. He showed a fleeting black cat images to kids in Berlin and kids of the Amazon, but they were interpreting them equally as big black cats. So there's theories that like we've got definitely got genes for recognizing spiders and snakes. We see a scuttling, we'll react. We'll see the snake movement, react. Even Eskimos do, who've never seen like a snake, in the areas where it's very high Arctic, they'll still react the same way. So, there's a theory that, we might have genes for seeing big cats. There could have been melanin, black, saber-toothed tigers, and Richard Freeman, my friend, calls it monster global template, that there's probably this genetic thing about us as well in England, because our brain might project onto this neutral thing a Bigfoot image, because we're used to escaping. We would have been prey to some of the other hominids, who might have been a bit more aggressive than us. So the brain projects. So some of these things could be projections of our brain. That's what his belief is anyway. And I think there's good evidence for that. I know people who've seen something moving like a snake who swore they saw a snake and will describe it, and yet they haven't. There's no snake there. So
yeah, like you say, projection and some people do say, are people seeing the things they're seeing because they're projecting that thought, even down to Bigfoot in some cases. Some people are saying, are they just, maybe I'm getting the wrong end of the stick here, but Yeah, I'm gonna forget what I've just said. Then I'm gonna just cancel what I've just said there, Jackie. Forget that. I've got it mixed up with something else. I've had too many things going. Cryptids. That's a lot to say in one sentence. What does Jackie think of getting EVPs when Bigfoot are around in the woods?
I don't know. I've not heard of that one. So yeah, I know about the obviously Sierra Sounds and all that, but I've never heard of the
What about the paranormal investigations? Are you picking up EVPs and stuff like that? What do you put that stuff down to?
I mean, a lot of them, I think, are misinterpretations because the brain sort of tries to make a pattern out of what you hear. Like, you know, so I think a lot of them, and people have often modified them so much. I have heard some amazing ones. A friend of mine, John Sable, he was the 80s actor who's now got into paranormal stuff, and he does civil in America, and he's got some absolutely amazing EVPs. They sound just like, you know, normal people talking. He's got one where what he does, they dress exactly like Civil War people. They get the women dressing in the dresses and the blokes as the soldiers, and his idea is it almost like tricks the ghost into thinking they're back in their own time, and it sort of and he had an amazing one where they would like all dressed up, and they plays a bugle, and suddenly right after it you hear this voice as clear as a bell. I mean, there's no doubt in what it is. It's just like me and you talking. You hear this, "Is that you, Kevin?" You know, clear as a bell. It's like, whoa. I wish I could have heard. I didn't record it because I wasn't expecting it, and I was basically this place called Wynards in Exeter, who it goes back to the 12th, 13th century. It was all like almhouses, and there's a chapel there, and ceremonies I found out afterwards used to be conducted in Latin. I didn't know this at the time. I had to research it. But there's various charities used to. It's now been sold off and people live as flats there. But used to be various charities, and I used to do this helpline there. One of the places I went to say where because of confidentiality, but there was a helpline, charity helpline I used to do, and I was just getting my socks off so I could put my feet up, because you were allowed to sort of slouch a bit on the calls later at night because you were half asleep, and but you'd put your feet up and take the calls. So I was just about taking my socks off so I could do that, and suddenly I had this whoosh of cold air go around me, and I had a sentence of Latin. Now, I wish I could remember exactly what the words were, but I recognised it as Latin. There was Domini was one of them. I remember that. I can't remember the rest, which really annoys me. A sentence of Latin as clear as a bell in my ear, as if somebody had just speaking in my ear. Whoa, did I scream? I never knew anything that clear. And the person I was with said, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" And something's just said Latin in my ear. And I could feel this icy cold wind go around me. And that was dead. That was ever so freaky. I've never heard anything that good. I wish I'd recorded it, but I didn't. So, and I've never really
could you remember what was said at the time?
I've never got a chance to record it though, sadly. But no. Yeah.
Oh dear. So have you got some anything on YouTube where people can go and have a look at anything that you've done? Have you got a channel?
I haven't got a channel. No. I'm trying to think. I could put some of the Bigfoot stuff up. I am planning to do that. So yeah, I can let you know, and then you can let people know when I've done that. Yeah, sort of too busy. Yeah, occasionally I put sort of paranormal things up with other groups, but we have to be careful. Sometimes people don't struggle with paranormal. People don't want to disclose they're on a paranormal group, so you can get people get a bit sensitive about that. But I've got some videos I've got to edit actually and stuff from Russia that we took that I need to put up. Really, I've got in my own collection. Interesting actually, we've got a couple of friends who can interpret Russian, and we had interpreters at the time when we were in back people talking about Almas experiences and Almasti, which is the Australopithecus type or Homo erectus type hominid. And we got some amazing interviews, you know, which I've got one interview I've got it's so amazing. I might have to cover the guy's face over because he was really worried about what he'd been actually tortured at some point. This was before the uncanny went up, but he's still very scared. Obviously things have changed now, but he's scared still, so he's very worried about him, so I'll have to cover his face up in any interview. But he talked about his grandmother having an almas in her garden that she used to use as a guard dog and put straw in the shed for it and garden for any strangers that came. I got some really BS. Well, yeah.
So you've heard some stories, I bet, with your research and the connections you've made. There are sort of things on YouTube of me doing lectures, so that's got quite some stuff there and some stuff on slides you can see on there. So they're on at the moment. So with a weird weekend north, various ones. So yeah. I'll put some links up in the description. I'm pretty sure there's some stuff on, like you say, on YouTube of your talks and stuff. So what are you doing next? What's your plans with anything with the paranormal or Bigfoot in the future?
I've just restarted a paranormal group with some friends. Can't say the name, but I actually investigated the possible ghost of a friend of mine who was always into paranormal. They've always said that she would come back as a ghost. And it looks like she has. So I've been investigating that, which is dead weird. And I had some quite strong experiences when I went to the house, and a partner told me, and so that is very strange. I can't. That's doing my head in that one. I'm a little bit too close for comfort. So I'm doing that at the moment. I'm talking at Lapis the end of Lytham St Anne's. I think it's October, November this year. I'm
going to try and come to that. That's literally just
it's really good, and they've got Weird Weekend North as well. I'm not speaking this year, but that's a really good. That's in Manchester. That's a really brilliant conference. And I'm hoping to go at Bigfoot again. Tony Lombardo, who did the documentary over my wing about the infrasound. He's trying to arrange me to go over, sort it out so I can meet him and his Rocky Mountain Bigfoot team there. So I'm hoping that's going to happen. And I'm going to the Isle of Man in May to investigate with a team Jeff the Talking Mongoose Poltergeist ghost, which is one of the weirdest ever ghosts ever. They think it was a poltergeist, but it manifested as a mongoose, very rude mongoose. So
wow,
very weird. Yeah.
I'd love to know how you got on with that and your other stuff.
Yeah, I'll be talking about that at Lapis actually. That's the
all right,
brilliant.
About. Well, we've come to the end of our time. I think we've gone through all the questions. Thank you, Jackie. I've really enjoyed chatting with you tonight. I'd love for you to come back when you've got more to tell us about the things you've been doing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been good being on, and some interesting questions as well from people. So yeah, got me thinking. Yeah.
So thanks to everybody in the chat. Thanks to everybody who put some questions forward. I'll see you all on the researchers report. Excuse me. This Wednesday, it's Blue Line Wednesday. Once again, thank you, Jackie. I've really enjoyed it. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.